Ahead on NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
NCBA's efforts in Washington, D.C. help to protect the business climate for cattlemen and women all across our country. We're in our nation's capital to learn more about how NCBA works for you.
And now, a special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello, I'm Kevin Ochsner. Welcome to a special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, coming to you from NCBA's Washington, D.C. office, which is just a short distance from Capitol Hill. When we ask producers about the value of NCBA, one of the first answers they give is how the organization provides a strong voice in Washington on behalf of the cattle industry. So today, we're going to get some insight into the work that goes on here each and every day. Recently, NCBA member Kelly Sullivan from Santa Rosa Ranch in Texas had a chance to testify at the House Ways and Means Subcommittee on Trade. She talked about the value of exports to U.S. beef producers and the need to expand market access for beef through trade agreements. Brian Baxter has more on how the NCBA staff helped Kelly prepare for her big day.
My name is Kelly Sullivan, and I'm a beef cattle producer. I own and operate Santa Rosa Ranch in Crockett, Texas, and I'm here today on behalf of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, and I'm honored to provide you with our perspective on the importance of trade with our customers in the Asia-Pacific region.
Testifying before a congressional committee on the issue of trade is not a normal workday for Texas cattle producer Kelly Sullivan. But as a member of NCBA, she believes in doing whatever it takes to help grow the global market for U.S. beef.
And I think it's very important to stay engaged in what's taking place in the industry. I think it's important to be an active voice for what we do and not let someone else actually kind of dictate the direction that we take. Where our industry is concerned, we have to be actively involved. We have to take care of our business. We can't allow anybody else to do it.
Though testifying can be intimidating, Sullivan spent time at the NCBA offices in Washington, D.C., working with the NCBA staff to get ready for her appearance before the committee.
Kent Backus really did a wonderful job preparing me with the information that I needed to do to give appropriate and accurate information to the committee when they asked. I mean, of course, they want to know statistics. I do follow that very closely, but I think it was important to be able to translate those statistics to things that actually meant something to the members, because again, they're not agriculture producers, but they do understand economics. It was really a very good preparation method that we went through. And so when I came and sat here and turned on the microphone for the first time, I felt completely prepared and able to tell the beef story that we need to tell on a regular basis so that they could understand how it impacts all the producers in the United States.
When the time came, Sullivan spoke out on the value of U.S. beef exports to Asia. She shared her concern about any changes to KORUS, the Korean-U.S. Free Trade Agreement, and her own experience of seeing Korean consumers buying U.S. beef.
And I visited a Costco, the largest in the country, in one of the suburbs of Seoul. And I watched as consumers stood 6, 7 deep at the meat case, buying up U.S. beef, and they have to refill their meat case 6 times a day. So it's a tremendous market for us, and we enjoy that because of KORUS being in place. And so that is one of the most frightening parts about those trade agreements going away or any adjustment being made, is that actually we'll see that market disappear, and it would significantly impact all of our American ranchers.
Kelly Sullivan made a difference in her day on Capitol Hill, but she also sees the critical importance of the expertise and the everyday presence of the NCBA staff.
You know, one of the things I think that we've enjoyed through our membership in the National Cattlemen's Beef Association is just how actively engaged our staff here is on the Hill. They are advocating for our way of life, and it's very involved. Much more complicated than even we can understand. And so they do a wonderful job as far as our staff here in Washington. It does a wonderful job trying to tell our story to legislators who really have no clue about what we do in this increasing urban world that we live in, our story becomes much more difficult to tell.
In Washington, I'm Brian Baxter reporting for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
And joining us now is Kent Backus, NCBA's Director of International Trade and Market Access. Kent, how important is it to have members like Kelly Sullivan engaged in the policymaking process?
I think it's just clear that, NCBA has a lot of very qualified members. We have a very strong grassroots network. Kelly's a prime example of that. We're talking about someone who lives international trade, whose business relies on it, and can speak firsthand. And I think being able to tell her story and put a face on trade is really what helps drive home our message and really helps deliver that message to the officials here in Washington. And being able to do that, personalize that, really makes it more relatable and helps it make it more personable for the policymakers here in Washington.
And she did it in such an articulate way. She did a very fine job. So tell us this, the Asian market is critically important to all of us as beef producers. What's next to ensure that we continue to have broadened access to that important market?
Well, Asia is the top target for us right now. When you look at the growth throughout the Asia Pacific, there's an emerging middle class there that's hungry for protein. We want that protein to be U.S. beef. Unfortunately, some of the policy decisions, especially to walk away from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, will put us at a disadvantage if we don't act now and strike bilateral trade agreements with countries, specifically with Japan. We also can't afford to walk away from the benefits we have seen through the Korea Free Trade Agreement. So those will continue to be top priorities for us, is to solidify our presence in Asia, because that's where the growth is and that's where our future lies.
You said it's the most important market, but beyond that market, what are some other exciting opportunities for the beef industry?
Well, we look at the Middle East, we look at Latin America, and even in Europe, there's plenty of potential for U.S. beef in all of those markets. But most of our sales are still going to be right here in North America. We have done a very good job of capitalizing on the opportunities in front of us. Now we need to tear down those barriers to trade, not only in Asia, but everywhere else across the world. And that's the message we'll continue to take to the Trump administration and Congress.
Tell our viewers a little bit about specifically what is NCBA's role in fostering international trade.
Well, when you look at our government's role, it's to get down into the details and provide that legal access for us into other markets. It's our priority and it's our role to advise them on how they can benefit the industry through those decisions. So we work with Congress, we work with the U.S. Trade Representative's Office and the U.S. Department of Agriculture to advise them on how best to open those markets so that we can capitalize on them and sell our beef at competitive prices to consumers in each of those countries.
We hear a lot of President Trump talking about fair and free trade. Why is fair and free trade so important to cattle producers?
Well, without question, the biggest barriers that we face are not necessarily on the tariff side, but the non-tariff side. So it's good to have free trade where we can tear down those tariff barriers, like the 40% tariff into Korea that the Korea Free Trade Agreement eliminated, and the 38.5% tariff in Japan that the Trans-Pacific Partnership would have gotten rid of. But as far as fair trade goes, we also need to make sure that those non-tariff barriers are addressed and that we have science-based access and rules of trade that are fair to our producers. Because a lot of times politics gets in the way, and politicians in those countries want to protect their domestic market, and they use non-science-based trade barriers to prevent our beef from getting into those markets. One thing we should also keep in mind is that the U.S. already has very low import tariffs. And so if we're going to have fair trade, that means we have to tear down those tariff barriers into other countries. So that's what free and fair trade means to us, and that'll continue to be a top priority for us at NCBA.
Kelly provided a great example of producer engagement for those of us who may not come back and testify in front of a committee hearing. What can we do to get engaged in this critical topic?
Well, I strongly encourage people to come to Washington because when you can see it yourself and you can deliver that message here in Washington, I think it helps you understand the importance that the policy making has on your business decisions. But you don't have to come to Washington to be engaged. You can send emails, you can pick up the phone, and keep in mind, all of those politicians are elected by you at home. They're going to be coming around, going to town halls, asking for your support. But don't just give it to them, make them earn it. Make them answer those questions, make them commit to those strong free market, pro-trade principles that we believe in, and hold them accountable. That's the best thing that you can do in the countryside, is to continue to hold them accountable so that when they come to Washington, we can hold them accountable too.
Fantastic. Certainly made a lot of progress, but there are a number of additional battles to fight, so good luck to you and the rest of your team.
Thank you very much.
Now, if you'd like to support the work of NCBA in defending and advocating for the cattle industry in Washington, D.C., why not become an NCBA member? It's easy to do. Just call toll-free 1-866-233-3872, or you can visit the website ncba.org. Although the majority of NCBA staff is based here in Washington, D.C. and in Denver, many travel around the country every day to engage with producers on a local level. Cattleman to Cattleman reporter Russell Nemitz has more on this important topic.
Well, the strength of any organization lies with its membership, and the same holds true for agricultural organizations like the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. And today finds us right in the heart of our nation's capital with the beautiful U.S. Capitol building in the background. And with us from the NCBA is a man who works hard every day for the NCBA on membership, Dan McCarty. And as we do this segment here in the nation's capital, Dan, right here is where it all begins with policy issues that are impacting our cattlemen and cattlewomen.
That's exactly right. This is where our team in Washington, D.C. takes the policy that's developed by our members, and this is where they work it, and they may try and get things done right up here on Capitol Hill.
You know, you're out beating the path up and down country roads and paved roads all year long on behalf of membership. And what are some of those big topics that you're hearing out there in the country that are impacting today's U.S. beef cattle industry?
Well, there's never a shortage of those topics, that's for sure, as you know, Russell. But the things people are talking about right now are actually a lot of the things we've been talking about for several years, and NCBA has been working really hard to find closure on some of these issues. When we talk about things that are going to impact producers across the country, one of the first things that come to mind, of course, is Waters of the United States rule. We've had some real significant movement on that lately, and we've seen a pretty good victory there as we're going to roll that back. That was something that was definitely going to impact everybody that had land across the United States, not only ranchers. So we've worked with a pretty good group of people to get some work done on that. As well, we've had some recent victories with the rollback of the gypsy rule. That's going to impact a lot of the more progressive cattlemen across the country that try and add value to their calves and use progressive genetics and use marketing groups to do their marketing. So those are all things that every day impact our members, and those are everything that our team back here works on every day.
We always talk about there's never a lack of issues impacting today's farmers and ranchers, but you know, as we look at doing this program here in Washington, D.C., you know, for folks back home, we can weather the ups and downs in a cattle market, but we can't weather the ups and downs in the red tape and federal regulation, and that's just why it's so important to have groups like the NCBA working every day on people's behalf back here in Washington, D.C.
I mean, that's exactly what NCBA does back here, is we're protecting the business climate of the beef industry. So when we talk about those issues like taxation and any of the other regulations, you're exactly right. It's really hard for us to plan for the future if we have all these things in place and they're uncertain. So if we can get some resolution on some of these issues, it's going to make it a lot easier for us to do business planning for the next several years for our operations back at home. And again, that's exactly what NCBA does back here, is we're trying to protect that climate. We're trying to make sure we can stay in business and make sure we can be competitive.
Absolutely, and those membership dues are going towards some very important causes, and there's always room for more members at the NCBA.
There is. We certainly would like you to join us if you're not an NCBA member already. We certainly appreciate your membership if you are, but you know, if you've never had a chance to interact with our DC staff back here and see the work that they do on your behalf every day, you're really missing out. I mean, we have a great team back here. And the other thing that's great about NCBA and the membership allows us to work on so many different issues that impact cattlemen. I mean, we're everything from environmental regulations to endangered species to the tax reform we talked about, marketing issues. We cover all the issues. If it impacts you at home on the farm or ranch, I guarantee you we got somebody up there on the hill right now working on it.
Well, we appreciate you joining us on Cattlemen to Cattlemen for this update from our nation's capital today.
You bet. It's great to be here with you.
All right, Dan McCarty with the NCBA. With that, we'll go ahead and send it back to you.
Still ahead on this edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll dig deeper into the work NCBA does in Washington to protect cattle-producing families. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Public land issues are somewhat unique.
The Public Lands Council is valuable to the ranchers because it's someone out there that's speaking their language.
Somebody has to communicate with the agencies, the BLM, the Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife.
Well, the Public Lands Council has provided incredible information and help, I think, to all members of the Congress.
Everything from water rights to endangered species to wildfire to the need to actively manage the lands through grazing.
And there's always a new battle coming up.
The people on the land know much better what's good for them, their land, and their community than anybody in Washington ever will or ever has.
So for them to have someone who is out there helping send their message and helping them keep their industry alive, that's super important for them.
There's no way you can really put a value on what they do for us. So having someone in Washington, D.C., a voice for the industry, a voice for public land ranching, such as PLC, Public Lands Council, is huge.
Forward. It's more than a direction. It's mandatory because the beef business rewards the progressive, the doers, the ones who know what it takes to go easy on cattle and never set them back. So set your eyes on the horizon, turn your back to the wind, and move your herd the only way you know. Forward. Vista Vaccines. Always ahead.
Welcome back to this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, coming to you from Washington, D.C. Right over my shoulder, you can see the Capitol building, where Congress works on a variety of issues that impact the beef industry. We sent Russell Nemitz to the Hill to talk directly with those involved in the decision-making process.
That's right, Kevin. In fact, we're in the Longworth House building here on Capitol Hill, visiting with one of those decision makers you just mentioned, Congressman Don Bacon from the state of Nebraska. And thank you, first of all, for joining us here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
We love having you here. You're welcome.
Well, and I bet it's a lot of fun for folks from your home state, like other Nebraska beef cattle producers, to visit your office and visit with you and some of your staff about some of those big key issues that are impacting the industry, not only nationwide, but more importantly for you back in your home state.
Yeah, we love having the cattlemen when they come up, or anyone from our agriculture community. And it's an honor to be on the agriculture committee trying to ensure that we're doing right by a treasured resource that our country has. It's our agriculture, our ranchers, and so it's an honor to be part of that.
So what are some of those key legislative priorities that you're not only working on behalf of your own constituents back home, but for the rest of us where we live in other parts of the country?
Well, there's several, particularly when it comes to the cattlemen. Trade is very important. Nebraska is the leading beef exporter in the entire country. So we want to make sure we're opening up those doors. Other countries, particularly in Asia, have some extra hurdles that we have to cross. And we want to compete well. If we can be put on a level playing field, I know we will. So I want to work hard on the trade side. We also have foot and mouth disease, ensuring that we have that vaccine storage capacity, sort of an insurance policy really, that will help save our export industry if we have an outbreak. So there's a couple of the ones that we have right now. And I think there's some transportation issues that we can work on as well. So there's a myriad of issues. Those are the primary ones right there.
How important is it for folks, whether it be from Nebraska, the Nebraska Cattlemen's Association, or on the national front, like the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, to come have that opportunity to visit with you one-on-one or some of your teammates or your staff members here on these big issues?
Well, I think it's very important. I mean, I was raised on a farm. We had some cattle, corn and soybeans as well. But then I had a 30-year break doing the military. So hearing from the cattlemen directly, it's great because we need to know what are those core issues. Like I've heard from many of our ranchers of just the price they're paying for insurance premiums. I wouldn't have that information without folks coming here saying, hey, my health care costs are outrageous. We need your help. So getting that kind of feedback is very important. And hearing about trade, hearing about the foot and mouth disease. And I can just go on and on. Taxes as well and impacts there. So if you don't get that information direct, you don't know how to represent well. And so their input, your input is vital.
Seems to me, and I think others would agree, there's a lot of positive momentum back here in the nation's capital when it comes to, whether it's agricultural issues or natural resource issues, or even like you mentioned, taxation issues. And it's, I think for the industry, it's great to see some of this positive momentum.
Well, the House has passed a record number of bills, a lot of stuff that will roll back regulations that have hurt our farmers, our ranchers. We've worked on some banking that will make getting loans a little easier. I think we have tax reform we'll get done this month out of the House. We've done health care reform, but the problem is we have to get more action out of the Senate, and we know that. And we just have to work with our Senate close. I know our senators are working hard on Nebraska to do that, but we have to get more than just them doing that.
Well, we certainly thank you for joining us here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be on the Ag Committee, and we appreciate the Cattlemen.
All right, thanks again. And if you'd like to learn more information on how to contact your member of Congress, it's easy to do. Just visit ncba.org. Another great way to stay connected is through your state cattle organization. And with us now from the great state of Nebraska is the Nebraska Cattlemen's Association's Executive Vice President, Pete McClimate. And Pete, we're actually doing this program outside of Nebraska Congressman Don Bacon's office here on Capitol Hill. Talk about what you guys are doing back here in Washington, D.C.
Well, obviously, we're pushing for all the issues that are important for beef producers, especially Nebraska beef producers. And so Congressman Bacon is from Omaha, but the reality of it is he's got the great attitude and philosophy that he's going to support all of Nebraska, just not his second district.
Absolutely. So what are some of those big ticket items that folks back in your home state are watching these days that are impacting not just your beef cattle industry, but also nationwide?
Well, the electronic logging device that is in possibility going to take place, and so it is very onerous and it doesn't work for beef producers and livestock producers around the country. And so as you think, the central part of the country is where we feed cattle, so we get cattle from all coasts, Canada, Mexico. So when you think of the commerce that's involved and the new rule that's proposed, it doesn't work, and we've got to firm up these votes on Capitol here for our members.
Yeah, what would be, the optimal result out of this, I guess, when it comes to those ELDs and hours of service? Because we've talked with a lot of other leaders within the industry, you can't treat those who haul livestock the same as other cargo.
Exactly. So if you look at the distance from getting from California to the central part of the country for cattle to be fed, or from the southeast in Florida, Georgia, Virginia, the current proposed rule, 11 hours in a 14-hour window, does not work. And so we've got to make a change. Ideally, it would not go into effect and we would be given an exemption, but we can't plan on that. So we have to plan for what the rule currently is to try to make it as best possible for our producers. So it's all the art of negotiation, and what NCBA does for us at the federal level is critical to the success what we can achieve in our states.
That's what I was just going to follow up with. How critically important is it to have a group like NCBA, which, by the way, has an office right here in our nation's capital, when folks like you can't get out of the state of Nebraska, but they're here working on everybody's behalfs every single day?
Well, with emails, phone calls, we can make a lot of difference. But a lot of times it depends on those that come here face to face and make a difference, and it's all done by relationships. So Colin Woodall's team, which includes Allison Cook and Danielle Beck, as well as Scott Yeager, some of those people, Kent Backus, they're our face, and we have to have that on the Hill as well as what we do back home.
Anything else top of mind for beef cattle producers back home, legislative-wise?
Well, obviously, we are threatened and keep a watchful eye on what's going on trade, because as 15% of our trade is dependent upon our exports. That many times is the difference between profit and loss. So we have to make sure that this current administration understands the need for that. So take, for example, KORUS, the Korean-U.S. Free Trade Agreement. $47 of every animal harvested comes from the Korean market. So that's huge. So then you take NAFTA to a different level. It's paramount that we have to have a really good, strong base here from our NCBA staff, making sure that we tell our federal delegation that we have to have trade first and foremost.
Yeah, that's what I think a lot of folks back home forget to think about when they think about the prices they're being paid, you know, at the ranch gate, so to speak. These export markets are creating additional value that they will end up realizing.
Yeah, and so then you throw on top of that the possibility with China, and that just, you know, really emphasizes this. So 1.4 billion people, if they bought a quarter a pound, think of what that would mean for the potential of beef producers back here in the States.
Well, there's never a lack of issues to talk about here in the nation's capital when it comes to our industries like the U.S. beef cattle industry. But Pete, thanks for always taking time to tackle these issues back here on Capitol Hill and for joining us here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Kevin, with that, we'll go ahead and send it back to you.
Still ahead, we'll ask NCBA Vice President Jennifer Houston to share her thoughts on the value of NCBA in Washington. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hello everybody, Stormy Warren here from SiriusXM's The Highway. Join me at the 2018 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show in Phoenix, Arizona. Come explore over 6 acres of displays from more than 350 companies during the best cattle industry trade show. Plus, you can have some fun with my friend comedian Bill Engvall at our exclusive Cowboy Comedy Club. So blaze a trail to Phoenix, January 31st to February 2nd. Find out more at beefusa.org.
No matter what job I've got to do, my John Deere 5E tractor will do it all. Whether I'm cutting, moving feed, or building a fence. Using my 5E means my work gets done faster at a price I can afford, and that works for me.
Welcome back. NCBA is the nation's largest cattle industry organization, representing cattlemen and women in every state. And NCBA works every day on the policy issues that impact our industry, while our fellow members are hard at work raising cattle back home. And joining me now to talk more about these efforts is Jennifer Houston. She's NCBA Vice President and a Tennessee cattle producer. Jennifer, when I talk to producers, it seems that many people still have questions about how policy is actually formulated and how does it move forward within NCBA. Can you give us an overview?
Sure. Kevin, NCBA is truly a grassroots organization. All of our policy starts at the state level and many times at the local level. When a producer has a concern or a thought or an idea, he brings it to his local or regional cattlemen's organization. If they also agree, then it progresses on to their state organizations at their state conventions. It gathers, approval from that state, and they decide they bring it forward to the appropriate committee at NCBA's annual or summer meetings. And so it's always starts from the bottom. It never starts from the top. So any one of our members can bring forth whatever concerns or ideas or suggestions that they have that NCBA needs to carry out.
But ultimately, those policies end up right here in our nation's capital. And why is it so important, in your opinion, that we have a presence here in D.C.?
Well, absolutely. The policy that we set is basically the playbook that our staff here in D.C. And here is where things happen. We're all affected by what happens here in D.C. And if we didn't have a staff here on the Hill at the agencies every day, then someone else would be making decisions for us without our input. So it's imperative that we have people here and that we're here as producers many times during the year to tell our story and to talk to our congressmen, our representatives, our agencies, and the White House about what's important to cattle producers.
So let's talk about that for just a minute. As you look ahead to 2018, what are going to be the top priority issues in 2018 for NCBA?
Well, we certainly continue work on the Farm Bill and the creation of a disease vaccine bank for foot and mouth disease. We continue work with this administration on rolling back some of our overburdensome regulations. Tax reform, trade always is top of mind. Our public lands people working on endangered species and working with our BLMs, our Forest Service, all that to make it not so burdensome to ranch on public lands. So there's never a shortage of things to do here in D.C.
As I always ask our volunteer leaders, why do you believe it's so important that folks become members of NCBA?
Well, number one, there's nobody that's going to tell our story or do our work but us. And, you know, Washington talks about numbers. And Washington, our legislators, our congressmen, they're all about numbers and who speaks up and how many you represent. So the more people that we can represent, the stronger our voice is. And it's just sort of the thing that you need to do. Nobody's going to look out for you except yourself. And so it's just something that you can do at every level to affect your industry and your bottom line.
So how can NCBA members stay engaged with the organization throughout the year?
There's a lot of ways, a lot of correspondence. We have Capitol Hill Beltway beef updates weekly. We have stakeholders updates to our members weekly. We have magazines. Our offices are always open, both for our staff and from an officer level, as well as through your state cattlemen's association. They extend our reach, they extend the policies into your state house, and then always extending down into your being involved in your local cattlemen's organization will make you more a part of the whole effort.
Jennifer, thank you so much for taking your time away from Tennessee to come and represent all of our interests.
Thank you.
There are many great reasons to become an NCBA member, but one is the chance to read the National Cattlemen. It's the official publication of NCBA and provides timely news and articles about the issues and events affecting your business. A subscription is included free of charge when you become an NCBA member. Just call 1-866-233-3872 or you can visit the website ncba.org. Stay with us. There's more of this special edition of Cattlemen to Cattlemen from our nation's capital when we return.
Want more profit out of your pasture? Then here's our 2 cents on using parasite control to make some dollars. In a trial of calves, Long Range outperformed Sidectin and Safeguard dewormers combined by as much as an extra 40 pounds. Yeah, that's a lot of extra profit, and that's why it pays to treat cattle with Long Range. Do not treat within 48 days of slaughter. Not for use in female dairy cattle 20 months of age or older, including dry dairy cows or in veal calves. Post-injection site damage can occur. These reactions have disappeared without treatment. You can't afford another season without Long Range.
Blaze a trail to Phoenix, Arizona and the 2018 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show. It's the cattle industry's biggest convention with education, networking, and fun. Plus, you can check out the huge NCBA Trade Show, outstanding entertainment, and more. Don't miss the 2018 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show in Phoenix, January 31st through February 2nd. Visit beefusa.org for more.
Welcome back to this special edition of Cattlemen to Cattlemen, coming to you from our nation's capital. Every day, the NCBA staff in Washington works on the issues that matter to cattle-producing families. Joining us now with more is Colin Woodall, NCBA's Vice President of Government Affairs. Colin, tell our viewers to begin with just some of the things you and your staff do on a daily basis.
Well, we have a team of lobbyists, attorneys, and veterinarians here on staff in Washington, D.C. that spend each and every day walking the halls of Congress up the street here and also working all the federal agencies to make sure that the voice of our producers is being heard. It truly is a full-time job because Congress is working every day on new legislation, and these agencies are working every day on new rules and regulations that have an impact on us. And if we're not there talking to them, then they're going to be talking to other people. More than likely, those other people aren't going to have our best interests at heart.
And I want you to expound on that a little bit. Why is it so important that we have a physical presence right here in Washington, D.C. 12 months out of the year?
Very few of these regulators, very few of these legislatures have a true background in agriculture. And they don't know really where their food comes from, but they're making laws, they're making rules and regulations that have an impact on our ability to put that steak on the table. So we spend most of our time in an educational mode, making sure that they understand just the basics of our industry, what we do, and then to take it one step forward and show them how their actions are going to have an impact on whether or not they can get their hands on that steak. So that's why it's important we're here every single day doing that education, so that way when it comes time for the votes on Capitol Hill, they're going to vote our way.
You know, we talk a lot about membership on this show, and you know, one thing that I think viewers might ask is, well, as long as there's an NCBA organization, why does it matter if I'm not a member? Why do membership numbers really matter to folks like you and the folks on Capitol Hill?
It matters to us and also on Capitol Hill, because when you go up and you talk to a member of Congress about the issues at hand, yes, they may like our industry, they may like NCBA, but they really like knowing how many people are going to actually show up and vote for them when it comes election time. So if we go in and say, well, we only represent a handful of people in your district, they're probably not as likely to vote for us as if we can go in and say we represent tens of thousands of members in your district. So that's why having good, strong numbers and members of NCBA is so important to our overall success.
You also work very closely with state cattlemen's organizations. Tell us why that partnership is so critical to you.
Well, our success really is about a strong state and national partnership. So we can do a lot here in Washington, D.C., but if we don't have the support of our state cattlemen's affiliates, then we are not as effective as we could be. When you go up and talk on Capitol Hill, yes, they want to know the national issues, but they always want to know what is going to be the direct impact on their producers back home. So being able to bring in the voice of our state affiliates is strong to show that we are working together for the betterment of the entire industry.
And let's talk a little bit about the Political Action Committee you all have and why it's so important for individual cattlemen and women to support the PAC.
The Political Action Committee, or the PAC, is one of the best tools that we have to raise funds to help get new members of Congress elected that understand our issues, or to try to get our friends here in Washington, D.C. re-elected. It takes a lot of money to run an election campaign, and they have to go out and raise that money. If we can help them raise that money, then that goes a long way in making sure they understand that we're their friend, and that ultimately we're also working very hard to keep our friends here in Washington. So that way, again, when it comes time to address our issues, we have people that truly understand the consequences on the U.S. beef industry.
Fantastic. Well, your hard work is recognized by a lot of us out in the country. Thanks for all you do.
Hey, thank you, Kevin.
Now, if you'd like to stay up to date on key issues and events from D.C., one way is by becoming a member of NCBA. Members receive the Beltway Beef Newsletter, a weekly report straight from Washington that gives an up-to-date summary of top policy initiatives that'll impact your business. Joining is easy. Just call 1-866-233-3872, or you can visit the website ncba.org. When we come back, we'll have more from Washington, D.C. on this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. So stay with us.
There is a new world out there, revealing itself in unpredictable ways. A world that demands more from the land and those who grow, farm, and build on it. This new world calls for the ingenuity to get more out of it, while preserving as much as we can. After all, to stay ahead of tomorrow, we need to be equipped for it today.
What does it mean to be an American cattleman? It means you have what it takes where it counts, on the inside. At Ritchie, we understand that. It's what's on the inside that defines us. We share the same values: ingenuity, commitment, sense of pride. These are the values that built this country. They're the values that built this company. Ritchie, proud to be a partner to the American cattlemen since 1921.
Welcome back to this special edition of Cattlemen to Cattlemen as we come to you from our nation's capital. We're learning more about NCBA here in Washington and the work it does to protect the freedom to operate for cattle producing families all across our country. Let's check in again with Russell Nemitz. Russell?
Well, animal health issues are always top of mind for cattlemen and cattlewomen, and one of the big issues out there in this area is antibiotic use in our livestock. And we're going to cover that in today's segment here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen. That's because we're lucky enough to have Dr. Mike Apley from Kansas State University with us on the program today. And Dr. Apley, antibiotic use is certainly a big issue these days in the U.S. beef cattle industry.
It is, and it's a big issue for all the protein industries, including, of course, us in the cattle industry, and also around the world. And one of the things we're finding is that not only are we heading towards a time when our antibiotic use will be more public and under close scrutiny, but also being compared to uses around the world. So it truly is a flat world. Well,
I think it's really encouraging to see the entire U.S. livestock industry taking on this issue head on and not trying to dodge any bullets, so to speak, and just trying to educate the public about the importance of keeping antibiotic use part of our day-to-day operations out there on our farms and ranches, and for good reason.
It is. We can protect the health of animals with them, and at the same time, we're responsible for being good stewards of the antibiotics. They're important for both human and animal health. Veterinarians and producers are very committed to keeping them both effective and using them safely and appropriately. It's called stewardship. And that's the next thing we're running into or starting out on the Presidential Advisory Council for Combating Antibiotic-Resistant Bacteria, or PACCARB. And the viewers could Google PACCARB and look at the live streams when meetings are happening, and also look at recorded streams of what we're doing. And we've just released a report on how we could stimulate new vaccines, new test development, and possibly new anti-infectives. And now we're heading off into defining stewardship in a One Health vein between both veterinary medicine and human medicine.
Well, you're a member of the President's Council on this issue. I mean, how important is it to have guys like you sitting around a table discussing this issue and trying to find workable solutions and answers and where we go into the future on this, and to have a president that is committed and makes this a priority?
It's incredibly important. And selfishly for me, it's been an incredible learning experience to meet new colleagues, very, very successful in the human health side, working in antibiotic resistance and infectious disease, epidemiology, and we've learned a lot from each other and gotten ideas from each other, and I think that the council's a joy to work with. It's been very educational, I think productive.
Well, those of us in agriculture, we get used to working with agencies like the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and when we're in the livestock industry, the Department of Interior. But also, I mean, we've come to realize we have to develop a better cooperation and team effort with our friends at the Food and Drug Administration, especially on issues like this one.
Yeah, and one of the big examples has been, I think all our viewers would know about the Veterinary Feed Directive and the changes that started January 1, all of our veterinarians and producers. And so we've made it through that one, and adjustments and learning about each other and about the rules. And so one of the other things the FDA has done has been to support 2 cooperative agreements to allow us in the protein industries to start our own systems for monitoring antibiotic use. And I hold one of those. Along with Dr. Sandra Godden at University of Minnesota, and she's spearheading the dairy side and I'm spearheading the beef side. And we'll probably have data rolling out the first part of next year, our first sample data sets. And our view is, and it's shared by the industry, and the NCBA's been a big supporter also, is that we are best off to start our own system for monitoring that will allow us to compare our uses with each other and how we can improve and use them in the best possible way. And so we're working on that hard, and it's just one more way all of us in animal ag are working on it, addressing the issue.
Absolutely. Well, we look forward to seeing that data when it finally comes out, and thanks for all your hard work on this big issue for the entire U.S. livestock industry.
Nope, it's a pleasure to do it.
All right. Dr. Mike Apley with Kansas State University, thank you for joining us here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen. With that, we'll go ahead and send it back to you.
When we return, it's time for another visit with our good friend Baxter Black. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay Tough fence will last 3 times longer and is 4 times stronger than low tensile fencing. High tensile wire, solid vertical stays, and tight fixed knots all provide superior strength. You will use fewer posts, saving time, labor, and money. Protect your investment for generations with Stay Tough fence. Stay strong, stay tight, stay tough.
We know you're up before the dawn because the cattle rise before the sun. And you spend long hours in the saddle because the herd isn't always over the next rise. And you care for the land because you know it takes care of your family. And we know you do great work. And it's time to tell that story to the marketplace. IMI Global is here to help you do just that. Ladies and gentlemen and followers of cowboy humor, in a moment of weakness, I, Baxter Black, have written another book. I appreciate it. Its title is Scrambled Wisdom. Almost isn't is it? Which almost makes sense. Well, our almost Christmas buy 2 get 1 free offer does make sense. $25 plus shipping. Call 800-654-2550 or online at baxterblack.com.
Dee was an authentic animal lover. She grew up on a western cattle ranch, and after she moved away, her suburban neighborhood prevented her from raising cows. They're so bulky, she said. But her need to shepherd was not satisfied by dogs, cats, or even a gerbil. One day she discovered alpacas. They are the Porsche of camelids compared to the SUV llama or the army tank dromedary. Any good stockman can affirm that it is possible to develop an affection for a bum lamb or a good and faithful cow. So when I say she loved her alpacas, we livestock people understand that particular bond. But I admit I did not entirely grasp the depth of her animal husbandriness. "Is that an alpaca wound?" I asked, pointing at the scratch on her hand. "No," she said, as if she was about to say something as commonplace as, "I fell," or "the rosebush got me." "No," she said, "I got it bathing a chicken." "I raise hens," she said, nonchalantly, as if I could name 3 people in my circle of acquaintances who actually keep layers in their backyard. "Do they get a bath every weekend or just on special occasions?" I asked, beginning to question her true relationship with the animal kingdom. "No, don't be silly. Etta," she's named after my aunt, was being picked on by the other hens and she'd quit laying. She was quite poopy. I didn't ask for a definition of poopy. After all, I am a veterinarian. I tried brushing her, and then I tried a nearly disastrous attempt with the steel nozzle of my vacuum cleaner. Finally, I filled a bucket with warm water and stood her in it up to her neck. After some initial wing flapping, she sort of relaxed, kicked back, and had a good soak. I washed her affected areas with soap. "You mean behind her wattles and under her wing pits?" I asked. "No," she laughed. She said, "I just toweled her off good and dried her with a hair dryer and poofed her up, and guess what? She laid an egg the next day." Dee looked at me and smiled sweetly. She had a tender heart. "Out of appreciation for your loving care, I bet," I said, and I meant it. This is Baxter Black from out there.
Thanks, Baxter. We always enjoy your segments on our show. Want to rewatch an episode of Cattlemen to Cattlemen or catch up on anything you've missed? Then visit our YouTube page. You'll find replays of all of our shows filled with educational segments and producer profiles from around the country. So check us out at youtube.com/Cattlemen to Cattlemen. There's more Cattlemen to Cattlemen still ahead. Stay with us.
Say goodbye to your toughest pasture and rangeland weeds for good. Because one product offers season-long control, handles the widest spectrum of broadleaf weeds, and clears the way for increased forage with greater grazing flexibility. So you get more beef per acre at a cost that can't be beat. It's Grazon Next HL herbicide, and if it's in your pastures, plain and simple, weeds won't be.
Welcome back. As you hear regularly on this show, there are a lot of issues facing the beef industry. As cattle producers, we all have enough to keep us busy on our own operations every day. That means we can't always be in places where issues are being discussed and decisions are being made. That's where the NCBA staff comes in. They take their responsibility of representing beef producers very seriously. They know we have the job of producing beef, and they have the important job of fighting issues, opening markets for our product, and ensuring a favorable business climate. Even though we may not always agree on how to tackle the issues, I think we can all agree that our success as an industry will depend on our ability to come together and address these challenges with a unified voice. As cattlemen and women, we share a lot of the same interests and values. Allowing one or two issues to divide us is dangerous to our industry and to our way of life. There are too many groups that want to put an end to livestock production. We must all stand together. So my personal challenge to you is to become a member of NCBA if you're not already. Don't sit back and refuse to join because you don't agree with an issue or two. Don't think you don't have to join because there's already enough members. Don't make other producers bear the entire burden of supporting the industry when we all enjoy the benefits of what NCBA does. Stand up, sign up, and be a part of the solutions that we need to develop to keep our industry moving forward. Join NCBA right now. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to a couple of important people. They're part of NCBA's membership team, Mary B. Martin and Miranda Craig. Ladies, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us. Pleasure to be here.
Mary B., you talk to a lot of producers. What do you tell them about membership in NCBA?
Becoming a member of NCBA, you're enrolling into something much larger than you and your operation. You are joining a force here in Washington, D.C. that is dedicated to advocating for you and your ranch at home every day.
Our team certainly does a great job here in D.C. And Miranda, a question for you. Why should people be members of NCBA?
So the opportunity to join NCBA is the opportunity to support a cohesive effort of a staff dedicated here in Washington to preserving the heritage that producers have so diligently worked to build. The grander our membership, the greater our voice in Washington, D.C.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for coming to the show and for all you do for our organization, ladies.
Thanks for having us again.
Thank you.
Now don't forget, registration is now open for the 2018 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show. It runs from January 31st through February 2nd in Phoenix, Arizona. You can get all the details on how to blaze a trail to Phoenix at ncba.org. Well, that wraps up this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Thanks for spending some of your time with us. From Washington, D.C., I'm Kevin Ochsner. May God bless the leaders of our nation and the decisions they make here. And may God bless you. We'll see you again next week, right here on RFD TV.